The Economic Community of West African States has lifted economic sanctions on Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso with immediate effect. Now, this follows hours-long deliberations by the Ecowas Authority of heads of state and government at an extraordinary summit on the political peace and security situation in the region in Nigeria's capital of Abuja. President of the Ecowas Commission, Dr. Omar Touré, said it had suspended the closure of the land and air borders to Niger, a no-fly zone of all commercial flights. It has also suspended the freezing of all financial transactions between Ecowas states and Niger, including transactions related to the bloc's central banking and the unfreezing of all Niger's assets. Well, Dr. Kester Ona joins us now for a conversation on the Saturday's ECOWAS's decision on Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, and what it does portend for the effectiveness of the body. Good afternoon, and of course, welcome to Newsday.
Thank you for having me.
Well, some analysts might ask whether the lifting of these sanctions might be a little bit too late, seeing as how the three of them, the three countries had, announced that they were leaving in a huff. Do you think this is enough to keep the three unhappy countries within the ECOWAS bloc, or would more need to be done?
Thank you very much, Awa. I believe that it's a commendable effort by the ECOWAS head of states and government to lift the sanction at this particular time, considering the fact that a lot of progressives have been making call on ECOWAS to reconsider their initial decision, to impose sanctions on the three recalcitrant nations, considering the fact that ECOWAS is a regional bloc and a regional bloc that frowns seriously at unconstitutional change of government. Taking that step at the first time, at least they took the step to checkmate, the occurrence of accused in other states. So I believe that that step has yielded this desired results. And for them to lift this sanction at this particular time, especially after retired General Yakubu Gowon, the former head of state of Nigeria, advised that they should lift the sanction. It shows that at least the ECOWAS are listening, that paying attention to all the details. Then, considering the fact that even the sanction has been lifted based on humanitarian ground, considering the fact that we are in the season of Lent, and very soon we enter the holy month of Ramadan, they lift the sanction to ease, life for at least for other people in West Africa. And then again, we know that when we talk about West African integration, nobody will want to see these countries leaving ECOWAS, because we have actually worked hard, at least all the West African countries, to be where we are today. So I think it's highly commendable that the sanction has been lifted.
But I'm wondering, doesn't the lifting of these sanctions, weaken ECOWAS's power to call its members to order, and also defend democracy, which it has vowed to do, especially under the leadership of Bola Tinubu? No,
it has not weakened ECOWAS. Because if you look at it, you don't just impose sanction permanently. When you impose sanction, you now listen to see the effect. If we look at, feelers coming from these countries, we can see that they are making efforts. Last time I was here, I said I believe, that a diplomatic process, will resolve this issue. And it may equally interest you to know that, both a formal and informal diplomatic process has been ongoing since then. So there has been series of both formal and informal meeting. When it's just like in a house, as parents, you discipline your children. You are not disciplining them to cast them away. You discipline them for them to learn lesson. And not just, yes, sanction has been lifted to alleviate the sufferings of people, that is citizens of Nigerians, Burkinabes, and Malians. But at the same time, there are other processes that are still ongoing. If you listen to the president or the chairman of Ecowas, he equally advised, the three countries for them to reconsider their decisions, you understand, for them to come back to the body while other things will be taking place. What we are trying to ensure is to ensure that democratic principles are entrenched in the entire area of West Africa and the Sahel region.
Well, just following on that analogy of parenthood, when you discipline your child, sometimes it goes one of two ways. You discipline them and they learn their lesson, or you discipline them and they become hardened and they do not listen. In this particular situation, I'm hoping that there's a lesson that is learned, and it hasn't hardened these three nations. But in your opinion, what do you foresee down the road? And what would you advise, if you could advise some of these leaders of the West African states to tread? Which way should they tread, and what should they be focusing on at this time?
Thank you very much. I believe that with the lifting of sanctions, it will hasten the diplomatic moves that has been ongoing, and then it will equally strengthen the level of integration that is equally, present in the West African region. Based on the fact that both land and sea borders has been, opened, even the no-fly zone has been lifted, and even the financial sanctions has equally been lifted. We see normal business activities return to West Africa. And then if you look in terms of security again, there are a lot of things at stake. You look at the Accra initiative on terrorism and insurgency. Then you look at the counterterrorism initiative, that is the multinational joint task force ongoing, So I believe with the lifting of this sanction is going to strengthen the security apparatus within the West African region for them to carry out their work effectively. So there is a lot of hope that things will return to normal very soon.
Well, if you said the lifting of the sanctions does not weaken ECOWAS as an institution, but I'm wondering, would it embolden other would-be coup planners in West Africa, to carry out their own agenda? Or is it time perhaps to admit that maybe, just maybe, democracy might not be the best form of governance, for this part of the world?
We have this adage that democracy may not be the best form of government, but there is no other form that is better than democracy at this particular point. I believe that ECOWAS should work assiduously to strengthen their institutions, especially the democratic institutions. The protocol on good governance, should equally be strengthened. Looking at what is happening, if you look at what is happening, not only within the West African region, globally, you discover that we are passing through a crisis stage. It's not just about ECOWAS. But with the sanction, we can equally see that at least since then, there has not been any coup in West Africa since then. So if we are talking about the sanction, I believe that the sanction has played this pivotal role in checkmating, the intrusion of unconstitutional change of power within the region. But as it has been lifted now, just like I said earlier, you cannot just because your child offend, you now beat him to death. As you are trying to correct him, you equally show him that compassion. After all, we are talking about the citizens of Niger, the Nigerians, we are talking about the Malians, and we're talking about the Burkinabes. So if you look at their citizens, you now realize that the excruciating hardship they are feeling, and that's what actually led ECOWAS, based on humanitarian ground, for them to soften the ground. At least discussion can now continue on a level playing ground.
Do you foresee the three nations coming back into the ECOWAS fold or rescinding their request to leave?
Well, there are lots at stake for them not to come back. If you look at so many initiatives, that they're benefiting from, even some initiatives being funded by the World Bank, a lot of developmental programs and all this. Being in a union is better because, you now become part of the whole. And once you are part of the whole, you can now benefit from what is made available to the whole. So I see them based on the fact that at least there has been this enabling environment created by this lifting of sanction. I think that they will reconsider their initial decisions to leave the regional bloc.
But then I'm wondering, how would you compare the way ECOWAS responded to the crisis in Senegal, with the way it responded to these 3 other countries?
If you look at the crisis in Senegal, I think it's an ongoing thing. Macky Sall has equally agreed, based on the fact that the constitution of the Senegalese people have mandated him through their constitutions that he should organize election in line with their constitution. He has agreed. I think the only problem we are having now is that he has not given a definite date for that election. And ECOWAS has equally come out to, to address the issue that he should adhere to the constitution. You understand? If you look at the queue in Niger, well, without, I think maybe, let me say, the queue in Niger, I think ECOWAS, the decisions was a bit drastic. You understand what I'm saying? It was a bit drastic. And, but thank God that at least at this time, they are trying to correct some of those overtures that we are taking initially.
Well, they're saying this is the bloc's biggest crisis since its formation in 1975. And sometimes crises have a way of making institutions stronger. Do you think this is one such opportunity for ECOWAS and its leaders?
Definitely. I think it's a learning curve. Considering the fact that initially the 3 countries that pull out accused ECOWAS that they have deviated, from the spirit of the forefathers, that what it was intended, accusing that other foreign powers, they have intervened, to work against ECOWAS. I believe that this time around that the sanction has been lifted and diplomatic moves are ongoing. It's time for check and balance, and equally for one to have sober reflection and look at things we're supposed to have done that we have not done, and things that we have done that we have not done well. So it's not just about ECOWAS, it's about equally the countries involved for them to, look at the entire process and make amend. But I believe that ECOWAS will emerge stronger this time around.
But I'd like us to be a bit more specific, about making amends. What exactly can ECOWAS do to strengthen good governance in the West African region, so that this whole drama can be avoided going forward? It has been said that it is lack of good governance that is leading to all these military takeovers. How do we tackle that in itself?
Well, I think that when we come to what ECOWAS can do, with what is happening presently within the ECOWAS countries, I think they are taking the right step in the right direction. If you look at Senegal, for instance, the people agitated that the election must hold. And Macky Sall now came out to say that he is going to obey the constitution. You understand? At least it shows that at least they are listening. Then if you look at even, let me say, Nigeria, for example, you can equally see the president, trying to making every effort to cushion the level of poverty in the level of hardship in the land. You understand? When we talk about good governance, I believe that if ECOWAS can create maybe an organ, such as maybe NEPAD, like the way AU created NEPAD, where they monitor themselves, and, to make sure that at least good governance will be entrenched.
But how well has that worked for the African Union?
Well, I think, when we talk about how well it has worked, we may say that it has not been perfected to such an extent, because when we talk about NEPAD, or, not NEPAD, I mean, peer review mechanism, African peer review mechanism, we can see that, yes, it's working, but it will take time for us to get to that level, considering the fact that there is no sanction attached to it again.
Oh, time. Okay, how do you feel Bola Tinubu has fared in his position as chairman of ECOWAS since his instatement?
If you look at the development that has taken place, a lot of consultations has taken place, and you now see ECOWAS coming out at least at this critical juncture that they are lifting sanctions, they are lifting all these sanctions based on humanitarian ground. It will show you that, yes, that the chairman of ECOWAS, who is our president, at least is listening. A few days ago, the former head of state of Nigeria, General Yakubu Gowon, retired, advised ECOWAS to lift those sanctions. And just their last meeting, we saw ECOWAS coming together that they're lifting these sanctions. At least it goes a long way to show that, yes, they are actually listening and they are actually working very hard to make sure that we achieve a high level of integration in the West African region.
Now, some analysts believe that ECOWAS's reaction, to the crisis in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso was influenced by some Western powers, who were benefiting from the affected countries. I'd like your reaction to this, and then I'm wondering if it is true, if it is so, how do you think it will affect, diplomatic relations with these countries going forward now that the sanctions have been lifted?
If we want to talk about maybe ECOWAS actions being influenced by maybe some influential partners. Well, it's not only ECOWAS, when nobody can work in isolation. Considering the fact that some of these supranational organizations, just like ECOWAS, they have strategic partnership. You understand? So if we look at maybe like the Trans-Mediterranean pipeline that moved from Delta State, passing through Niger, Algeria, Morocco, then to supply gas to Europe. You understand? You discover that there are a lot of things at stake. So it's not only about ECOWAS. Talk about EU, talk about EU itself. Even if you look at NATO, you can see that even America has an overwhelming influence in NATO. You understand? So it's not out of place for ECOWAS to be influenced. But then the issue is that how do we use or how do we manage such relationship or partnership to the benefit of our people? You understand? That is where national interest or regional interest comes in. So I believe that ECOWAS has done the right thing by lifting the sanction. And because they have lifted the sanction, I see that I'm seeing a situation whereby the regional bloc will be strengthened the more. Even the 3 countries that wanted to opt out, I see situations where they'll be coming back.
Well, we sincerely hope that is the case. Concerning the way that the international world is viewing what is going on within Africa right now, especially the West African bloc, what things should we be keeping in mind in terms, well, not us personally, but the leadership? What should they be keeping in mind in terms of protecting Africa's sovereignty and dignity, so to speak?
Well, if we talk about what is going on globally, I believe that a lot of things are going on.
Right.
We talk about the Israeli-Hamas crisis. We talk about the Russian-Ukrainian war. A lot of things are going on. Even in the West itself, a lot of things. You talk about demonstrations, riots here and there. So I think we cannot just single Africa or maybe West African region, out of what has been going on. Like I said earlier, we are passing through a difficult, stage in the, in the history of the world. So I think that both African leaders and the other leaders are making effort to solve the global problem that we are facing. And if you look at some of the issues that are happening in West Africa, this issue are issues that transcend beyond national boundaries. Like the issue of terrorism, transborder crime is not something that a country can maybe solve alone. Some of these things need a multilateral effort to, to handle. And I think that they're making effort to address these issues.
Research Fellow at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, Dr. Kester Ono, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.
Thank you once again for having me.